I have to say that I'm inordinately proud of the lineup that we've put together today, and I'm going to allow myself to be that proud because it's not really my doing. I had some tremendous help this year. Kieran Kapoor joined the poetry organizing team this year, and so Ned Balbo, who's one of our readers in this hour, introduced Kieran Kapoor to a great many poetry readers with his selection of her manuscript visiting Indira Gandhi's palmist for the 2013 Anti-Venom Award, which led to its publication by Alexa Press. Today, Kieran will introduce Ned, as well as the other reader for this hour, January O'Neill, who has worked with Kieran for years organizing the Massachusetts Poetry Festival. So I'm going to hand this over to Kieran now.
It was great fun to work with Alfred to put together this lineup and to give something back to my lovely book-loving hometown. So I've enjoyed it immensely, and it's now a huge pleasure to introduce the readers for this hour. January Gill O'Neill, I think, needs very little in the way of introduction here. As I heard someone say recently, she is a fixture of the poetry world on the North Shore, and indeed she is. She is assistant professor of English at Salem State University and a board member at AWP and at Montserrat College of the Art. But she's best known in our neck of the woods for her 10 years of service as the executive director of the Massachusetts Poetry Festival, where I had the privilege of working with her for many years. Now that she has stepped down from that role, we are getting a better chance to appreciate the other things she's been doing all these years, and that is writing 3 award-winning books: Underlife, Misery Islands, and most recently, Rewilding. When I ask my poetry students what makes a poem, the first thing they mention is metaphor. Metaphor, they will say, is essential, it's natural, the bedrock of poetry. Defining exactly what a metaphor is proves a trickier matter. But our conversation eventually winds around to the etymology of the word, metaphora, as I'm sure lots of you know, in the ancient Greek, which means to carry over or to carry across, pointing to the fact that a metaphor is a method of connecting two things that normally stand isolated at some distance from each other until a concoction of words carries one across to the other. It's a muscular device capable of lifting and transporting heavy objects so that they can rest in some kind of communion. It's this function of metaphor that comes to mind when I read January's poems. Across all 3 of her books, Jan's poems oppose isolation and speak to the fundamental bedrock of poem making, building a connection. Natural diction and syntax give her poems an effortless feeling, as though we are in the presence of everyday speech and everyday scenarios. Out of the familiar and the everyday, the poems build a kind of intimacy. They connect speaker to reader and the particulars of the story to the wider truths and meanings. In the poem Kettling, she describes catching sight of vultures while driving. She writes, "Above, a kettle of vultures soared on the thermals, shadows flying in upright spirals. You can't understand in that moment how I yearned to be free, free of the body and all its fog, untouchable under the whisper of heaven, a current running in me and through me, a whip of wind, a miracle." The poem carries us all across, from the spiral of ominous birds to the miracle of freedom. Like all her poems, it does that brawny, ancient work of refusing isolation and shouldering us across a gulf we want to cross. Please welcome January O'Neill.
Is this okay? Can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
All right. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. There's a little It's a pleasure to be here. I love Newburyport and I love this festival. So thank you to all the organizers. Thank you, Alfred and Kieran. I don't have a lot, so you'll have to flag me if I start going long. And what a pleasure to read with Ned. We met, I think, at probably Virginia Festival book.
Yes.
So it's been a while, so it's nice to see Ned and Jane here. So I'm going to mostly read from my latest book, Rewilding. My last, Rewilding and my last book, Misery Islands, they both deal with divorce and coming through on the other side. Rewilding is more about coming through stronger in the broken places. So I'm going to start with a poem called Brave. When I was getting married, our wedding date was September 15th, 2001. So it was a few days, supposedly, it would have been a few days after 9/11. But I am from Virginia, so we had to drive from here to Virginia because there weren't any flights taken off. So this is a long poem in 5 sections. Let's see, there's a raccoon in the poem. It jumps back and forth in time, that's important to know. The last stanza is 3 lines long. I always forget to say something else. Hopefully that's it. And I guess I'll pause between sections. Oh, and I swear, and I have one swear. It's probably the only one I Brave. A thin layer of ash, fine debris, probably bone, coated the windshield as we passed exit after exit to the Garden State Parkway. We took detours and back roads while police blocked every on-ramp, blue lights pulsing. Officers in yellow hazard vests stood next to their squad cars as we drove past midnight. My soon-to-be husband, mother-in-law, brother-in-law, and me in a 1992 Grand Marquis on our way to Virginia. On the radio, nothing but news and static. All of us silent, sleepy, edgy, uncertain, both absent and present on an empty highway driving past New York City. I would never tell my daughter that some nights I lie awake listening for the raccoon I know is in the attic, but pretend isn't there. The scratching, the heavy scampering, she hears it too. If he were here, Daddy would check things out. If he were here, Mommy would not feel so lonely. We pretend to be brave, bang on the walls, play loud music to scare it away, pray it does not have kids. Marriages fail. There is no one else to go up there and get the little fucker. On our day in court, my lawyer was late, so the judge moved our case to the afternoon docket. We sat for hours, you on the left side, me on my right, listening to failure after failure, the quick dissolve of marriages into oblivion. I remember thinking, Hallmark doesn't make a card for this. The moment when the judge calls your name and uses words such as irreconcilable, broken and final, and a swell. No, a surge of tears breaks as the judge uncouples us. You cried too. Neither of us looked at the other or spoke. When I turned around, you were gone. You had left the building. Before we arrived at the hotel, we took engagement photos in our wrinkled clothes. And before that, we watched the sunrise as we crossed the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. And before that, we listened to Howard Stern around 5 a.m., broadcast live, trying to find the right words, any words. And before that, you took the wheel from your brother so he could get some sleep. And before that, silence. And before that, you held my hand as we rode in the back seat. And before that, we were not allowed on the Garden State Parkway. And before that, we stopped for gas, sandwiches, checked the check engine light somewhere in Connecticut. And before that, there was a toll on the Tobin Bridge. And before that, I was on the phone with the maid of honor who would ride the bus from Texas to Virginia to arrive by Saturday. I thought she was crazy. And before that, I was on the phone with my father who said, "Be careful," and "I love you." And before that, no flights were allowed out of Logan Airport or anywhere. And before that, I said yes. And before that, you said yes. And before that, I asked, should we go through with the wedding? I would never tell my daughter, male raccoons have no part in raising their young. How to love. After stepping into the world again, there is that question of how to love. How to bundle yourself against the frosted morning, the crunch of icy grass underfoot, the scrape of cold wipers along the windshield, and convert time into distance. What song to sing down an empty road as you begin your morning commute? And is there enough in you to see, really see, the 3 wild turkeys crossing the street with their featherless heads and stilt-like legs in search of a morning meal? Nothing to do but hunker down, wait for them to safely cross. As they amble away, you wonder if they want to be startled back into this world. Maybe you do too, waiting for all this to give way to love itself, to look into the eyes of another and feel something. The pleasure of a new lover in the unbroken night, your wings folded around him, on the other side of this ragged January, as if a long sleep has ended. I wonder if it's like this up here. There's so many turkeys in the area.
Yes. Yeah.
I saw so many one year, I felt like it was my spirit animal. So I am local, I'm from Beverly, and recently our local, roller place, the Roller Palace, closed.
Oh, yeah,
I don't know if you all have ever been to the Roller Palace, but as a single mom for a long time, it was the only place I could go and dance and take the kids and kind of still feel a little bit like, myself. So they closed recently. I'm very sad about that. Night at the Roller Palace. After the birthday crowds thin out, after the hokey pokey and chicken dance, after the parents have towed their shaky kids like cabooses ready to decouple, and the pint-sized skaters have circled the rink like a gang of meerkats spun into a 19-car pileup, you turn sideways and angle by as another one bites the dust, thumps overhead. You give a finger point to the DJ stand because in your mind, we are soldiers in the march against time, grooving to the retro beat while the disco ball shines overhead, cut crystal against rainbow walls. You glide like Mercury or Apollo Ono without wings or skin suit, in lowrider jeans that hug your body like you hug corners, past them all on the smoothed out parquet floor, worn down by time and rhythm. The trick is to make it look effortless. Remind them that your quickness is a kind of love. You are the spark between wood and wheel, and when your cranky kids hang out by the wall ready to go, holding those 8 wheels by their brown leather tongues, you give them a wave and keep circling. Just one more song, you say. This is your me time. It's all skate. You've got your whole self in. That's what it's all about. So Rena asked me to read a poem I haven't read in a while, so thank you for that. Sometimes, so I write a lot of poems about my kids, and often I get asked, how do they feel about it? You know, and for the most part, they're fine, but my daughter, every once in a while, there's a poem that this is that for her, because now she's 13. Conversion theory. Don't fall in, I tell her, as she straddles herself over the American standard. I listen, we listen, cooing and cheeping for the pale yellow trickle to begin between her legs. She leans towards me, each of us anticipating this small miracle, the body turning energy into water and baby into girl child. The shit comes later, I think, from those places only she can reach. This is the body's proposition. What goes in must come out, changed, transformed by this ritual connecting us all. The acceleration of water joining a boundless river. It will be years before hair thick as vines covers her trap door, years before she dots her eyes with a heart or pierces something, an ear or a lip or the soul of a boy. There's so much to teach her about this handwritten world. But today, we listen for rain through the gutter pipes. It's funny to read that poem and think of who she is now. So, you know, I think I'm a little off, but. Okay, so I'll read a few local ones. Well, at least one local one. So my son is a little bit of an athlete. He used to play baseball, he doesn't now. But for those of you who know Beverly, the baseball field that I mentioned is called Harry Ball Field. It's the name of the field. Just like to get that way soon. The Rookie. America under the lights at Harry Ball Field. A fog rolls in as the flag crinkles and drapes around the metal pole. My son reaches into the sky to pull down a game ender, a bomb caught in his leather mitt. He gives the ball a flat squeeze, then tosses it in from the outfield, tugs his cap over a tussle of hair before joining the team. All high fives and handshakes as the major boys line up at home plate. They are learning how to be good sports. Their dugout cheers interrupted only by sunflower seed shells spat along the first base line. The coach prattles on about the importance of stealing bases and productive outs, while a teammate cracks a joke about my son's fro, and then says, "But you're not really black." To which there is laughter. To which he smiles but says nothing, which says something about what goes unsaid, what starts as a harmless joke, routine as a can of corn. But this is Little League. This is where he learns how to field a position, how to play a bloop in the gap, that impossible space where he'll always play defense. It's probably helpful to know that my son, both of my children, they're biracial, so they're a little lighter skinned than I am. Hoodie. A gray hoodie will not protect my son from rain, from the New England cold. I see the partial eclipse of his face as his head sinks into the half-dark and shades his eyes. Even in our quiet suburb with its unlocked doors, I fear for his safety, the darkest child on our street in the empire of blocks. Sometimes I don't know who he is anymore, traveling the back roads between boy and man. He strides a deep stride, pounds a basketball into wet pavement. Will he take his shot, or is he waiting for the open-mouthed orange rim to take a chance on him? I sing his name to the night, ask for safe passage from this borrowed body into the next, and wonder who could mistake him for anything but good. Let's see, I think maybe two more. So occasionally, people have said I look like our former First Lady, not our current. told I look like Flotus, New Year's Eve party 2014. Deep in my biceps, I know it's a compliment, just as I know this is an all black people look-alike moment. So I use the minimal amount of muscles to crack a smile. All night, he catches sight of me, or someone like me, standing next to the deconstructed cannoli and empty bottles of Prosecco. And in that moment, I understand how little right any of us have to be whoever we are. The constant tension of making our way in the world on hope and change. You're working your muscles to the point of failure, Michelle Obama once said about her workout regimen. But she knows we wear our history and our darkness in our patience. A compliment is a compliment, this I know, just as the clock will always strike midnight and history repeats. This is how I can wake up the next morning and love the world again. And so I will close with this poem that I wrote for the 100th anniversary of the National Park Service. So I was asked to write our poem for Massachusetts, and I chose Old South Meeting House in Boston, but it feels sort of appropriate since we are in this space. Even though I swore twice, I feel terrible like that. Old South Meeting House. We draw breath from brick, step on stones, weather-worn, cobbled and carved with the story of this church, this meeting house, where Ben Franklin was baptized and Phyllis Wheatley prayed, a mouth house where colonists gathered to plot against the crown. This structure, with elegant curves and round-top windows, was the heart of Boston, the body of the people. Survived occupation for preservation, foregoing declaration for conversation. Let us gather in the box pews, once numbered and rented by generations of families held together like ribs in the body politic. Let us gaze upon the upper galleries to the free seats, where the poor and the town slaves listened and waited and pondered and prayed for revolution. Let us testify to the plight of the well-meaning at the pulpit, with its sounding board high above congregations raising heads and hands to the sky. We, the people, the tourists and the townies, one nation under this vaulted roof, exalted voices, speaking poetry out loud in praise and dissent. We draw breath from brick, ignite the fire in us, speak to us. The language is hope. Thank you.
Whenever I recommend Ned Balbo's poetry to a fellow lover of poetry, the same thing always happens. They nod vaguely, maybe they make a note in their phone or scribble in their notebook, and the conversation moves on. Then 3 days later to a week later, I get a phone call. An agitated person is at the other end. Who is this poet? Why didn't I know about them before? Where have his poems been hiding? They are excited and incredulous and ever so slightly irritated, as though I personally have been keeping Ned a secret from them. Ned's poems, of course, have not been hiding anywhere. He's the author of 6 books, the winner of numerous awards and fellowships, including an NEA, the Donald Justice Poetry Award, and the New Criterion Poetry Prize. But I do understand the excitement, because Ned's poems feel so fluid and at ease, and yet they demonstrate tremendous technical mastery. They are poems you want to know, poems you want to have always known. This month, I've been deep in his recent book, 3 Nights of Perseids, which won the Richard Wilbur Award, and I'm still feeling that excitement. I'm amazed again and again by how thoroughly these poems participate in the contemporary world, and yet make such timeless shapes. Ned is an exquisite formalist who is also, as Mark Jarman noted, one of the most gifted critics of popular culture of our time. In Text and Fury, which explores 2 recent cases of online harassment, which end in suicide, he writes, "It's hard not to think of the cruelties we've witnessed or seen face to face, the age-old half-secret societies that meet in some undisclosed place. But why does the gift of a keyboard, cell keypad, or downloaded app compel the disclosures that once shared entangles us all in their trap? Whose fury withheld sets the fire? Whose fury revealed fans the flames? What sort of hate starts with desire and ends with a dead woman's name? It's hard to think of any other poet who gets to the grit and nub of our time more directly, its technologies and the costs of them. This book has WikiLeaks, cyberbullies, and up-to-the-minute headlines, but with careful meter and subtle rhyme, gives us the light and space and time with which to truly confront them. Please welcome Ned Balbo.
That was extremely kind, Karen. Thank you so much. And obviously, it's wonderful to be here. And I must thank Alfred and Karen and Rena and Mike Juster and so many others that have made this event possible and that have been so supportive through the years. It's also a special day for me. I'm meeting a family member I haven't met before. So I'm going to actually start with a couple of poems I hadn't been planning to read, which are actually from my first book. And so I guess I'm reading these for Gerald. And the first poem I'll read is called Elizabeth and Elaine. Some of you know that I'm adopted, and one of the complexities of my situation is that my birth mother and adopted mother were sisters. And one reason for that is that my birth mother already had a son named Lance, who actually died not too long ago. And my half-brother's custody, of course, would have been threatened if my birth mother were having children with another guy. This was the late 1950s, and divorce laws were very strict, and women were very strictly judged. So, in this poem, I'm about 7 years old. Yes, this is me. It's not a speaker. It's me. I admit it. My birth mother, Elaine, and Elizabeth, my adopted mother, are throwing coins in the pool in our backyard, and asking Lance, my half-brother, and I to compete in picking up those coins. Lance, who was a couple years older, of course, always won, much to my frustration. And I thought it was so interesting as a metaphor for the competition between the women. You know, who is the best mother? You know, you both are raising your child. So it's a very awkward situation for them, and one I feel a lot of compassion for. So Elizabeth and Elaine, summer 1967. I shook off the drops and looked for my mother. Elizabeth, glancing toward the deep end of the pool, edged close to her younger sister. Elaine kicked water, dangling her feet. Lance swam past, split the sun in two as Elizabeth laughed and shouted, "Dive!" tossing up coins. Blue sky reflected clouds and shattered instantly. I kicked through clouds, still rumbling, but Lance was older, faster. Our mothers watched us streaming with water from our dives. Elizabeth's jaw drew tight. This was her pool. Lance offered the coins. She took them. Would her son surface just once, fists filled with coins, not water? Go! She threw them to my side of the water. I shot from the chrome steps, swam as if clouds broke open inside my lungs, a dozen suns sparkling before my eyes. I headed toward mother of pearl, vision blurred, polished floor of a pool still spattered with change, falling short as I dived for nothing. A coin or two. Lance rose, every dive triumphant. Elizabeth stared at the water, waves displaced by his weight. I was tired of the pool. Elaine twisted the strap of her suit, face clouded, her sister circling tensely. I'm his mother. Elaine looked away, caught watching her sons, first Lance, then me. How could I give him away? The sun touched her bright hair, almost dry. Only one more dive, one chance to prove who was the better mother. I gulped air, the light dimmed, shadow crossing the water where loose change, falling, glittered through clouds and scattered as all turned calm. The clear light of the pool exploded. Submerged, I looked up, just a game of pool, lands banking from wall to wall. The firstborn son slammed his fist on my chest, reached further through clouds and tore as I choked and surfaced. Another failed dive. I coughed, fought back tears, and dropped underwater. Elaine whispered, "When will you tell him I'm his mother?" As I bounced, weightless in silence, a mother's face rippled. I didn't want to come up or breathe, and a cloud of gnats touched the surface of the water. I miss that pool. The next poem that I'll read about a family, and probably the last one, is called Whose Son, Whose Daughter. It's a villanelle. And complicating the situation is that my mother also had a daughter. And in an effort to make sure that we would know each other growing up, my adopted mom, Elizabeth, moved to the same neighborhood where she was being raised by other folks. So later on we found this out, so we're both attending high school. Actually, we're in the 3rd grade together, same class, also the 5th grade, same class. We sang in chorus together, but we didn't know we were brother and sister all that time, until I was 13. I think she found out a little bit sooner. So this is about that situation. Whose son, whose daughter? This is around 1975. Sister, when you blew smoke against the glass, I looked up at the school bus, stood below in snow. For months, you knew whose son I was, whose daughter you were. A block away, your house, grandparents who raised you waited. Crunching snow, the bus moved on. You blew smoke on the glass. Red stoplights flashed, brakes groaned again. Your voice carried as you stepped off. Don't look back now. For months before I knew whose son I was, we'd pass in the halls and look away. I guess when told, you thought, it's better not to know. I watched, laughing. You'd blown smoke on the glass while I imagined other lives for us, those missing years. If I'd been raised with you, all gone. I thought I'd known whose son I was, but now, too late. You'd passed from view. The bus scattered exhaust on snow heaped by the plow. How much was lost, like breath against cold glass. You tried hard to forget whose son I was. I'm actually, in contact with her, and she's raised a family and done some very good things in her life. So I'm happy for that. To switch gears a little bit, and Kieran, who was so kind, about popular culture. I feel like I need to read more popular culture in this. You and Mark as well. I guess there's nothing more popular culture than going to a bar and drinking. For a while I was a visiting faculty member at Iowa State University's MFA program in creative writing and environment. And of course, everyone who's been to a bar knows there's always a sign that says free beer tomorrow. We all know that. Of course, tomorrow never comes. That's the whole point of the sign. So this is a sonnet called Time's Passage at Whiskey River. Free beer tomorrow. I read the sign. It's late. Tomorrow's near. The beer's flat. No one taps another keg. The shortstop stumbles on the runner's leg while frozen strangers balance at the bar, slow motion gestures wasted on the air. Outside, the tattooed girl takes one more drag while friendly foes attack the punching bag that offers glory to the challenger with change to spare. Surprised, the shortstop blinks, eyes flashing back and forth in diamond dust. Young men with sunken cheeks wait for the drinks the tattooed girl withholds, because she must. When all our hopes, past midnight, turn to sorrow, there's no free beer today, and not tomorrow. Don't be fooled by the sign. Let's see. More about popular culture and technology, too, because you mentioned that, Kieran. I think many of us are on Facebook or some social media site, even though I think faster than we thought Facebook is becoming the site of maybe older folks and younger folks. And so social media instead. And I thought, well, you know, it's so strange to sit there tapping away at these strangers you don't know. And I kind of wondered, you know, whether there's social media in the afterlife. Or whether the afterlife, you know, is social media. You know? So instead of Facebook, this is called Dead Book. The epigraph is for all your post-life social media needs. Reluctantly, I opened an account sooner than I'd expected or desired. You wouldn't believe how many friends I found. Requests backed up. No password was required. The latest status updates bring surprises decades out of date. A few are sad. I scroll the page absorbed. A comment rises, then descends on some eternal thread. I wouldn't say I like the conversations, although I'd feel much worse if there were none. I post replies, then wait, a slight impatience stirring. Is someone out there? Anyone? At first I feel relieved to find my profile looked complete the moment I logged in, but why can't I update it? In a while I'll click on help and maybe try again. I'm told the site is free and always will be. Still, I feel unsettled, slightly lost. Is nothing tangible? Who's listening really? Why should I care if strangers like my post? Yes, there are strangers here. We're not all friends. Somehow, the long day's twilight never ends. I tap the keys, there's nothing else to do. It won't be long before I friend you too. I'd like to read a couple poems about space. This is called High Strangeness, and the speaker is giving advice to a field operative on how to interview people about the UFOs they believe that they've seen. High strangeness, and the epigraph is the degree of strangeness is certainly one aspect of a filtered UFO report. The higher the strangeness index, the more the information aspects of the report defy explanation. In short, did the strange thing really happen? That's by J. Allen Hynek. It's a way to guide your understanding of UFO reports. High strangeness. The Saturn disk reported back in '54, ringed sphere against the sky, was not the first recorded, nor do we know why it hovered for an hour, then vanished like a ghost into upwelling dust. It was, we knew at once, extraterrestrial. Before and ever since, far-flung, celestial, unearthly craft and shapes compressed or spherical surveil us by night. Triangular teardrops that shed a greenish light, eyewitnesses recall, still shocked by their encounters through space or time, or both, tracked down against their will. Your job's to calm their fears and coax out every detail. Place no one under oath. They may be sensitive, persons whose faith is challenged by the very concept, their world upended, changed by truths they can't accept or with a wave disprove. When they describe abduction from farms in Minnesota, crop circles and burnt embers, their missing son or daughter lured in some seduction no one quite remembers, unprodded, nod your head and take notes, copious notes. They may recount instead the raising of a wand that scattered sheep and goats, the silvery gloved hand whose touch could paralyze a witness or stop time. Charred metal, shards of glass are clues to analyze if we can gather some before they're lost. And yes, a few will speak of cakes, unsalted on their tongues, offered as nourishment or recompense for wrongs by strangers, strangely silent, cover up their tracks. Galactic travelers who let their lives touch ours while sojourning on Earth. The stories may be true, though cakes appear too in folk and fairy myth, where those who dare to taste such food endure a spell that robs them of their past, all memory erased. which does explain at least how much they cannot tell. And this one, those of you that grew up in the 70s, as I did, may remember Parliament and George Clinton and pretty amazing album, widely revered as a classic, as Mothership Connection. And one of the characters in the album is the Star Child. And Clinton, I think himself, talks about how he stirred together elements of Eric von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods, that book about supposed extraterrestrial visitors to the ancient world, and also added other science fiction elements and just kind of created a whole mythology that inhabits this album. And this is called Star Child, and the first quotation is, the epigraph is by George Clinton. Citizens of the universe, recording angels, we have returned to claim the pyramids. Star Child. All right, Star Child, no longer Clarks or Kubricks. You're the alien whose aim is wild in 3D shades, bound for the stone where Hendrix took flight, Star Child. Do you recall which frequency you dialed, what cosmic road you'll glide before you fix your course on planet Earth and land, exiled with souls whose rumble reached you, trading licks so fine the gods of Easter Island smiled? What subspace chatter, garbled in the mix, called to the child in us, Star Child, in you? If someone's hex could summon lost ships from Bermuda's hold, or cast spells locked in Egypt's hieroglyphics, yours might, Star Child, traversing light years, whirling disk unveiled in lustrous lazy eights that bend and flex all starlit night. What secrets stand revealed aboard your mothership? In bass lines, sax, and drums to free our minds and leave us thrilled. From Sunrod, Jesus, Jimmy to who's next? That's right, Star Child. Let's see. I've gone completely off my plan here, so I'll just pick something else here that might be fun to hear. Elizabeth Bishop, there are some poems also in Three Nights of the Perseids that inhabit the persona of Elizabeth Bishop briefly, and this one is called A Toucan and Samambaia about her life in Brazil with Lota. And it's pretty much taken, I think, verbatim from a letter, in terms of images, plot, and tone, what she's suggesting, although much of the language is my own as I shaped it into a sonnet. So this is A Toucan and Samambaia. In Samambaia, Sam the toucan thrived, flea-bitten, azure-eyed, banana-fed, content with mountain view when he arrived, and poor bird when he left. Anything red, bright-edged or shiny, helped him pass the day, encaged but loved. His huge beak was the prop that brought such humor and humility. Remember how he'd swallow every grape a pinball down the gutter? Once, distracted from some sudden storm, I felt a shock. Sam's outside. Drowned? I ran, but unprotected. He'd survived. Immobile, gaudy beak turned skyward, eyes shut, soaked to his blue skin, amazed. Same condition I was in. Bishop was very pleased that he was okay. Getting near the end here, I think I'm going to read just three more. I actually moved from Three Nights of the Perseids to Upcycling Pominock. And continuing with the theme of birds. I know there are bird lovers in the audience. I love birds. Growing up, had birds, and many finches at one time. And Jane and I had the pleasure of rescuing a crow together once. And this poem's in two parts. And the first part takes place back in my childhood when my dad and I saved a crow, and my mom too. And the second part is recent years. Stray crow. Once, long ago, I played the rescuer to your lost kin, stray crow. Not 10 years old, I found a soaked, near-drowned bird in the filter of our pool. Is water memory the flood that bears us stunned into what's next? If so, then I'm surprised that we're so calm, one of us having flown somehow through time, some cosmic rip, intangible yet near. It must be you, because I'm all grown up and you're still black, bright black, like polished stone, layered, engraved. You're grounded but alive. And if you had the power of speech, would you bring news of that boy, or perhaps his father, who removed you, saved, till you took flight? Today, I find you tail askew, successor or original, where you took shelter after storms, now hobbled. Stairwell dweller, towel caught, eyeing movement through the weave and basket lid. You glimpse my wife. She drives us to the rescue in her stalwart Saturn, having traveled time to be with me and save you too. What joins us is some pattern no one knows that prints its secret text upon our lives. And when the sign appears, a flaming phoenix nailed to a post, I know I'm in the present, not the past, from which you flew, stray crow. The ride uphill, sun-crossed, leaf-shaded, heading into light. And I think I'm going to end with a poem about a popular board game, or perhaps entryway to the supernatural, which was actually developed and first sold in Baltimore, at least when it became something that you could box and sell, rather than something that people created themselves for their own pleasure when they wanted to contact the spirits. And this is called Ouija for Beginners. And again, thanks everyone for having me here and for coming to the reading. Ouija for Beginners. And of course, this is from the ad for the Ouija board. Ouija knows all the answers, weird and mysterious, surpasses in its unique results, mind reading, clairvoyance, and second sight. Ouija for Beginners. The Ouija board requires two believers seeking favors of the spirits. As above, so below. The planchette window inches toward a numeral or letter. With a shudder, characters accrue to words or names, random sums to dates, lost birthdays, anniversaries, at which we freeze in recognition, cold hands quivering, our wavering connection to the dead, a revelation. Will a vision welcome us tonight into the dark? What else might lurk beyond the world we let ourselves behold? Forget the old apocrypha of how the term was coined, that two words joined to form a double yes in French and German. Learn to listen for assent, refusal in the silence. Sift the nonsense mixed with truths half spelled out on the board, where all you've heard or dreaded lies encoded. Patience now. The dead are slow. They've all eternity before they nudge the planchette edge through hands you thought were yours, quite powerless to rest on yes, or just as easily, no, unless it's you.